To jump into a topic that I think hits all of us. It's actually something over the weekend. I had the privilege of being a guest provider at a residential facility, and this topic came up over and over and over again. So I thought it'd be helpful for us to talk about it today. And it's this: emotional regulation in our relationships. So today we're going to talk about staying grounded when things get elevated. Okay, so buckle up. Here we go. Here's the truth. It's not in the moments of conflict that damage our relationships most. It's what happens when we don't know how to handle what we feel. In fact, I sit with couples in my office every week, and in the midst of that, here's what I find. I find it's not so much about what we talk about, but how we talk about it. Think about this specific with conflict. It's not so much what we fight about, but again, how we fight about it. Like I meet with couples all the time that they've lost track of what it is they're actually even talking about because they get so spun up in how they're talking about it. I meet with couples frequently where it's they talk about the same things over and over and over and over and just constantly feel stuck. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So let's start out just giving maybe some definition, some clarification. So we talk about the idea of emotional regulation in our relationships. Well, let's just give some maybe a working definition of what is regulation and then therefore what is dysregulation. So here's regulation. Regulation is the ability to notice what you're feeling, create space before we are reacting and respond in alignment with our values. This is important, even when it's hard. Got it? So regulation is our ability, again, to notice what we're feeling, create space for ourselves before reacting and responding in alignment, right? With who we are, with what's consistent in what matters most to us, being the person we want to be in that moment. In fact, notice, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there's a difference between reacting and responding. So if we think about regulation, regulation is really about responding. Okay, now if we talk about dysregulation, what's dysregulation? Dysregulation is when our emotional state becomes so overwhelming or out of control. And here's that word that we react. We react impulsively, defensively, or maybe we shut down, often in ways that are misaligned with what we really want or need in that moment. Dysregulation, it doesn't just affect our feelings, it disrupts, it's important, our connection, right? Our connection, our clarity, our communication. Like it's really important that relational work must begin with individual work. When I work with people who are coming into therapy for something relational, whether it's a husband and wife, whether it's a parent and child, whether it's a friend dynamic, whether it's a family dynamic, that statement holds true. Relational work must begin with individual work. What do I mean by that? It's that we can't expect our relationships to be healthy if we're not healthy. We can't expect our relationships to have insight if we don't have insight. We can't expect our relationships to feel close and connected if we're not able to do the work individually, to be able to work through our own journey and our own process in a place that allows us to find connection with ourselves, and in today's conversation, connection with other people. If this is making sense to you, that right, we have to be able to do our own work individually as a foundation for the work that we do in our relationships with others. All right, so it's an important kind of posturing to understand in the midst of our individual work and how it connects in our relationships with others. And it's simply this idea: We are mutually designed, mutually meaning there's two parts of this, designed for both protection and connection. Protection I think if we think this primal kind of part of us for self-preservation and self-protection, right? We are designed inherently for protection. So we have what we know, the fight or flight response, the back of our brain, the amygdala. It pushes the chemicals. It triggers us into when there's the threat of danger. That's the internal designed part of us for protection. Protection comes up when something feels off, something doesn't feel safe. Again, and that's a very important part of our experience, our existence, and our awareness. And then there's this other side of us, which is we are designed for connection. We are designed to be in relationship with other people. We are designed to be in community with others. If you look at this through the faith lens, might think about that. God designed us for protection, to stay alive, right? To thrive on this earth, to multiply and be prosperous, right? He also designed us for connection. He designed us to be in relationship with Him. He designed us to be in relationship with one another. All right, it's all part of the plan. Sometimes these postures compete against each other, but the idea is they're really intended, and when we're healthy, that they complement one another. All right, so let's explore this a little bit more, and we'll kind of flesh this out as we go. So let's talk about the cycle of dysregulation in our relationships. So uh, think of it this way: like in relationally stuck relationships, here's what often happens: like two people, they actually have an intention. The intention is to connect, right? It's part of that part of I just talked about, the part of connection, but they keep getting caught in what we know as a negative cycle or this mutual kind of dysregulation. So it might sound something like this: like one person withdraws, the other person escalates. One shuts down, the other pursues harder. One lashes out, the other retreats in fear. Right? It's this dance that so frequently happens in our relationships. And we go round and we go round until both feel hurt, frustrated, unheard, unseen, and unsafe. So you see how I refer to this as a cycle, right? A negative emotional cycle. I think what's important about this, it's not about that that the people who find themselves and get caught in these, we're not about bad people, right? It's about unresolved pain, about unmanaged emotions. That's what's behind all this. I even talk about it in the clinical office about the buttons that get pushed, or kind of one of the trending ways to talk about it is we got triggered. When we think about that, a button got pushed or we got triggered, we have to be able to ask ourselves insightfully, what's the button that's getting pushed? Or what was not just the triggering event, but what is the trigger itself? Let's go back to this idea of some unresolved pain or some unmanaged emotion. There's something going on below the surface. So here's what happens, right? Like a situation happens, and we so quickly jump to reactivity. Reactivity is, again, what happens in the midst of dysregulation. I love this term, we often use. It's what's called an emotional hijack. An emotional hijack is exactly what reaction feels like. It's like our emotions hijacked our brain, our body, our values, our morals, our intentions. Like it just hijacked everything. It just took over. And before we know it, we're not in charge anymore. We're not in control. No, our emotions are in control. In fact, they're out of control is the problem. Right? But in the absence of that, we're not in control. What I mean by that is we're not in control. In fact, this neurological process that happens when the fight or flight response, it pushes these chemicals. The prefrontal cortex in our brain is not doing what it's supposed to do. The frontal cortex is actually shutting off in the blood and the oxygen and the nutrients. It's getting distributed to other places in our brain and in our body, and havoc is happening. Right, our heart is racing, like our palms are getting sweaty. right? Our shoulders are tightening up, right? All sorts of other things are happening. It's in those moments of dysregulation, those moments of this kind of emotional hijack, right? That we find ourselves struggling and caught in these moments of reactivity. So if we don't know how to regulate, then we keep protecting ourselves, right? To the very end, all the way up to hurting the relationship and hurting the other person because we are so committed to protection and preservation, again, because things don't feel safe. So, what do we do with that? So, when one person in the cycle learns to pause, breathe, respond differently, it creates a new possibility for connection. The whole idea of this is we're able to disrupt these negative emotional cycles. Here's I think what's important. Regulation, it's not just about control. It's really about creating safety for everyone involved, for you, for the other person, and for the relationship. For those of us that are people of faith, I think there's a lot of insight that we can pull from Scripture. Think about this. You maybe have heard this proverb before, which says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak." Notice the wisdom in that. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, right? Where the idea of this is like slow down. That's a statement, and that's a practice of regulation. Or how about this? Here, it's actually also in the book of Proverbs, which says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Right? Gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Another incredible truth of wisdom. If I just pause for a moment, you know what I love about these proverbs, or these words of truth, is they're thousands of years old. I think if we can just wrap our heads around it, it was the same then as it is today. Now, they might have had different language for it. They didn't have modern psychology and all of these fancy terms like emotional regulation and dysregulation and emotional hijack and all the other stuff that I've shared today. But the truth still remains the same. Thousands of years ago, people were getting dysregulated. Thousands of years ago, people had practices and they had insights to be able to, as I talked about, pause, take a deep breath, and respond differently. Okay, so I want to give you an example, like a real life example. So I'm going to talk about a couple that came into my office, and man, they were stuck. Like even when they came in for their opening, like intake session, I actually got to see it play out firsthand. I was able to observe them, right, getting stuck in their own cycle, same fight. It seemed like over and over and over and over. And here's what happened in that negative emotional cycle. It wasn't just emotional, but it was behavioral. If we go back and think about, we've talked many times about CBT, where situations lead to thoughts and thoughts lead to feelings. And here we are, feelings lead to behaviors. So here's how it played out for them. The wife, she felt abandoned when he shut down. All right, so the husband shuts down, the wife feels abandoned. And then catch this, here's how the cycle spins. He felt attacked when she got loud. Notice this? Okay, so can you just envision this for a moment? All right, the husband shuts down. The wife therefore feels abandoned. The wife responds by getting louder, probably with the intention of trying to re-engage her husband. Right? Her intent is to stay connected or find connection. Right? He shuts down. Sometimes we call that turtling. Like he literally tucked inside of his shell, right? And he's like, "Leave me alone. I'm not here." Right? He was protecting, he was preserving. Well, she didn't like that because it was disconnecting for her. Right. So the wife, again, she gets loud, right? She does whatever she can. She has this kind of anxious energy to re-engage and reconnect. But what they notice is it's not working because whenever she gets loud, the husband feels attacked. So then consider this. What do you do when you feel attacked? Or what in this case, what did the husband do? Well, he just stayed inside of his shell, right? He just stayed shut down. So this couple would go round and round and round and round. Again, a situation happens. The husband shuts down. The wife tries to get him out of his shell and kind of re-engage in the conversation. But by doing so, she gets loud. When she gets loud, the husband feels attacked. When the husband feels attacked, he doubles down on his behavior of shutting down, which makes the wife feel more abandoned, and she feels helpless and hopeless and hurt, and so she lashes out even more, right? Which then the husband feels attacked even further, and man, you can sense how this goes round and round and round. So for this couple, our work began not with fixing the fight. I think that's an important part, but helping each of them learn how to recognize and regulate when the fight happens. So here's what it looked like. The wife, she began to name her fear without blaming her husband. Right? Her fear of feeling distant and disconnected, or feeling misunderstood or misheard. The husband, he learned to stay present instead of escaping. So you can imagine, right, with those simple, subtle, but significant shifts in them from dysregulation to regulation. Like they both started practicing. And as they did, they came up with this statement, actually like a mantra. I can feel what I feel and still choose how I respond. That's a very regulating statement. It's a very responsive statement, right? They were reminding themselves and reminding each other it's okay for me to feel what I feel and still be in charge of all of it, right? I can choose how I want to respond. So rather than an emotional hijack where it decides for you, right? Your emotions are going to take over. You're going to be out of control. They're going to, be hijacking everything. To be able to slow down, I can still feel what I feel. Do I feel abandoned? Do I feel hurt? Do I feel attacked? Right? Give it a name. Slow down. Be present. And I can still choose how I respond. That was the beginning of some emotional maturity in both of them. And that's what opens the door to healthier cycles in our relationships. Okay, so as we kind of wrap this up, I just want to give you a little bit of application. Okay, consider these 3 simple steps. Think about this and make it practical in a relationship you have. Is it a coworker? Is it a spouse? Is it a friend? Is it a family member? Is it one of your kids? All right, pick a relationship, and we're going to kind of practice this sort of like let's call it a regulation reset. Okay, so here's step number 1. You're going to notice the activation. What I mean by activation, you're going to pay attention to the body cues, right? Your palms are sweating, you have a tight chest, you're heating up, you're shutting down, your speech changes, right? Like whatever's happening there, pay attention to it. And then just pause for a second to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Whether that's an emotional experience, whether that's a physical experience, what am I feeling right now? I think it's important, and to do so without judgment. Okay, here's step number 2. After you've identified or this activation part, step 2 is create the pause. Man, this is hard, especially when emotions get the best of us, when things get heated and escalated. Create the pause. So you're simply going to take 3 slow breaths. Here's what's really important about that. You're not only taking those breaths to slow down and like hit the pause button, which is exactly what we're talking about here, but you know what it actually does? Deep breathing actually re-regulates the brain. Remember when I talked about the amygdala and it pushes all these chemicals and redistributes everything in our body and in our brain? Deep breathing actually helps us re-regulate. It helps that prefrontal cortex to kind of come back online and re-engage. So you're going to take those 3 slow breaths. You're going to, if you need to, step away. But if you step away with communication like, hey, I need a moment. I want to come back when I have a little bit more clarity, or when I'm just able to process this a little farther. It's actually super mature, right? If you're starting to feel that rise of dysregulation, again, hit the pause button and not only communicate, hey, I need to take a break. Let's think about this as not just a pause, but maybe a time out. And I love this statement, which is every time out, times out. What do I mean by that? Not only can we call a timeout, but the principle in that statement is I'm committing to come back. Think about this on the basketball court. The coach calls a timeout, and as soon as they call a timeout, the clock goes up because there's a timeout clock, right? Every time out, times out. So again, when we hit the pause button, when we call a timeout, it's not just that we're going to communicate, I need a timeout, or I'm hitting the pause button because I need to take a break, but we're also committing to circle back. Why is that important? Because so often, in fact, this was true of the couple that I was talking about, it feels like we're shutting down. It feels like we're ignoring, right? When we just say, hey, I can't talk about this right now. Hey, I need to take a break. Hey, I'm not willing to have this conversation. Although really healthy, right? To set those boundaries, have clarity, it can often feel like abandonment. It can feel like rejection when we don't follow it with, you matter to me, this conversation matters to me, and you're going to put a time limit to it, right? Let's come back. Again, every time out, times out. All right. And then the third principle in this is respond with intention, right? Respond, right? Not react, but respond. Respond with intention. Something like this. Choose your words from a grounded place, right? After you've taken those breaths, after you've hit the pause button, right? Speak for your feelings, not from them. Here's what you want to do. You want to use first person language. I felt dismissed, and I really want to stay connected to you. That might be an example, right? Respond with intention. All right, as we wrap this up, emotional regulation, it's not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about being able to stay in the moment longer. It's about creating safety and creating space for that person you're with. And as I talked about at the beginning, it all starts with us. It starts internally before it becomes relational. So, in the midst of this, right, practice these principles. Understand what's going on, do that body scan, hit the pause button, right? And then own your response. Choose to respond with intention. If you learn anything today, just recognize again, it all starts and it all works from the inside out. All right, great to be with you guys today. Hope this was helpful for you. If you want to send us an email, you can do that at coaching@livewellcoaching.com. If you want to leave a comment here on the post, would love to hear from you. Have a great day, everyone.